I came across David on an interview on ABC Radio. You were talking about stereotype threats and gave me such clarity for what I wanted to talk about this month for women. To start us off, just tell us about stereotype threat, a bit of your background and how you became interested in it and just what it is.
So my background is that I've played chess since I was 4 years old, and thought about that as a potential career for some time. Became a grandmaster and the top player in Australia, and played overseas for a while. And then for a year, I played more or less professionally before I decided for a career change and moved into economics. So now I'm an economist working at the University of Queensland, but still loving the game of chess and being involved in the chess world in different capacities. And so I sort of jumped at the opportunity to combine my fields, my passions. So I work as a behavioural economist, which means that I work more in psychology than economics, to be honest, some sort of crossover with the social sciences. And social psychologists are particularly interested in gender issues, in nature versus nurture debates, and how things like unconscious biases or irrationality or societal pressures and social norms affect different policy issues. And so I started a project where I looked at that in general, but also particularly focusing on the chess world as kind of a nice testing ground to look at some of these theories. And the reason it's a nice testing ground is because it's hugely male dominated, even though it's a cognitive competitive domain that anyone can pick up. There are no biological differences that we've been able to identify between males and females. And yet we still have, at most international tournaments, one female player for every 50 male players. And the difference at the very top is huge as well. In terms of grandmasters, it gets even worse. And so it's a real question about why this is. Why don't we have elite female players? And also, why don't we have just higher numbers at all levels of female players? Why are women choosing not to play chess? Why are they dropping out? And there are different reasons. Academics have been arguing about this for a long time. Also, educators are very interested in this because chess is known to be good for children to develop cognitive skills, problem solving, calculation, creativity. So it's great. It's a great thing to pick up during your school years. So if there's some reason why girls are dropping out, particularly if they want to keep going, but there's something external, some sort of pressures that are stopping them, it's really important we work it out. Even if they don't go on to make it a career, it means that they're missing out on something that they might love doing and would be good for their education in the future because of some sort of pressures. And that's where stereotype threat comes in.
Interesting. So what exactly is stereotype threat?
So stereotype threat is the idea that groups that feel a stereotype on a particular issue can actually subconsciously perform worse just because they know about the stereotype, and it turns into kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. In some of the original experiments, they would have girls who were sitting a math test, and for half of the girls, they wouldn't tell them anything, just get them in to do the math test and compare how they did against boys, and everything was fine. And then for the other half, before they started the math test, they would say to the girls, usually in some sort of subtle way, oh, this is a test that girls don't do very well on. And they found that the girls would do worse. Now, these are the same sort of girls. There's no reason why they should do worse, but just hearing that you're somehow supposed to do worse can affect you and can actually demotivate you, but also affect your performance in other ways. And it's not just gender as well. They've also found it with race, such as if African Americans have been told that they don't do particularly well on something. In Australia, there's a lot of publicity and a lot of hype about the gap between Indigenous people, First Nations people, and the rest of the Australian population. And it's great that we identify the gap and we're trying to close the gaps in different domains. But also it does mean that a lot of Indigenous kids grow up hearing about these gaps over and over again. It's not clear to me whether this is a good thing or not. It's something I think...
Such a good point.
Yeah, we probably need to think about this a little bit more, because if you're brought up being told that 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 of your brothers is going to probably end up in prison, then that's something that might seep in a little bit into your head.
That can become the self-fulfilling prophecy as well.
And that's kind of interesting to me, because it is important that we bring attention to these issues. And obviously bringing these policies to everyone's attention is much better than completely putting it under the rug as it used to be. There is this kind of flip side. And in the chess world, at least from the research that we've done, it seems to be really strong. It's definitely the case that women, when they play against a man, even if we know that the man is no better than another female opponent, the woman will play worse at the board. She'll make worse moves. And so something's going on.
Yeah, so I just want everyone to think about when that happens in their lives. I've just been thinking now, and this happens to me with technology around my husband. So if I'm trying to do something on a computer, I get like this mental overload, and I'm just waiting for him to be like, no, you don't do it that way, or, you know, you're doing it wrong. And so I definitely underperform. And then he might do something like try and put a cover on a doona, and he just gives up. He's just like, no, you don't. It's just like, he's obviously capable of doing it, but it's like just this, it is this thing like that is little tiny examples, but these things definitely play out in our everyday lives, and they can exaggerate and accumulate so that we accept an identity and we accept a story of ourselves. And this was really, it came to my mind when I was listening to your first interview on the ABC, is that same day my niece got her OP or ATAR, whatever it's called now, and it was the same one that I got, the same number. And I had always seen her as a very academic, really intelligent person, but never myself that way. I never saw myself as intelligent because I was put into the artsy, you know, creative zone, and everyone called me fairy queen and like stuff like that. And I accepted that story of myself, and I thought, wow, what if I had had a different story, that I could be academic? And because I wasn't good at maths, I never learnt my times tables, and I've spent my whole life hiding that fact. And I'm a school teacher, and I do relief teaching and all this, and I teach maths all the time, and somehow I just figure my way through it, and I understand the concepts, but somehow I just missed these key learning areas, which then became my story. And I just want to know, how can we identify these stereotypes and these stories that we've accepted, and how can we overcome them in our lives and on a greater level? Like, I know that you work with organizations on how we can collectively overcome this.
Yeah, I think this issue is going to become more and more important as we develop as a society. You mentioned a little bit earlier that we have become more aware of more toxic sexism, for example. We don't really see as much of that in Australia, particularly decades past. It's more of these subtle biases now that are taking a bigger role, like you mentioned. And when it comes to say something like chess, but also other male-dominated fields like mathematics, computer science, or things like that, often it's not the fact that the people in those professions now are somehow toxic or trying to keep women out of it anymore.
Exactly.
In fact, quite the opposite with chess. We would love to have more female players playing. It's terrible to go to tournaments where you're just surrounded by 500 males all the time. So we definitely want the opposite. But I think it's the fact that when girls grow up and start going to clubs, they just see that it's all males there. Or if they go to a big tournament to watch, they'll just see male grandmasters on chess magazines, and on the internet and media reports, it's all about chess champions who are all male. And they actually did a bit of an experiment. It was a documentary they did in the US about girls' chess, where they interviewed a bunch of girls between, say, the age of 4 and 10, and asked them, do you want to be a chess player when you grow up? Do you want to be a grandmaster? And most of them said no, I don't think I can. And they were asked, why can't you? And a lot of them, and it's kind of sad, but illuminating at the same time, when you see a 5-year-old girl think for a bit and then say, well, you have to be a boy to become a grandmaster. All the grandmasters are boys, so there must be some reason why that is. So I think from an institutional perspective, which, like you mentioned, is where I'm sort of more focusing, it's about promoting female role models, really promoting female chess players to go into training roles for schools as well, so that when kids are brought up learning chess or mathematics or computer science, you're not always having male tutors teaching you.
Yeah.
And when you go to spectate, or we have chess commentators at events and chess personalities, a lot more effort is put into promoting female role models.
Mm-hmm.
We've done that with a few, I guess you would call them like affirmative action sort of policies in the chess world. And some recent research from some economists found that in France, that's had a huge effect, that we've got many more girls playing in France compared to other European countries ever since they put in this sort of a couple of these policies, which is really great news.
Okay.
At sort of more like a nuclear family sort of level, we've noticed that parents can often have these unconscious biases as well. There was a really interesting experiment they did at a science museum where they went and observed parents of boys and girls when the kids would ask, say at a dinosaur exhibit or something, what's going on here? What they found is that with a daughter, you would say, well, this exhibit says that these are the brontosauruses and they lived around here, blah, blah, whatever. With a boy, they would answer a little bit differently. They would go a little bit more into the science, a little bit more about the how and the why. And the parents aren't doing it deliberately. No one wants to treat their kids differently in this day and age. This experiment was done in the US, but it's something that's still sort of there, that whether we know it or not, we think about boys connected with science more than girls.
Yes, exactly.
So here's my theory about chess, which I haven't proven with research yet, but I think it's pretty strong, which is that learning the moves of chess is kind of difficult. Same with math and times tables, like you mentioned, or learning how to program at a computer. There's a learning curve you've got to get over before you start to enjoy the game. So if you teach a 4-year-old how to play chess, they're probably going to want to give up pretty soon, because you got to remember all these moves and stuff. I'd rather go look at the iPad. So they'll say, I don't want to play anymore, Dad, or I don't want to play anymore, Mum. Then some parents are going to say, if they've got a son, they'll say, no, you're going to like it. Don't worry. Let's try again. Maybe with a daughter, sometimes they're more tempted to say, well, she doesn't like it, let's not push her. And so you're treating your kids differently, even though you don't really mean to. It's kind of
exactly.
So I think those sort of areas are where maybe the stereotypes start from. And then after then, it sort of snowballs over time.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any ideas on how we can overcome those or be aware of them in our own lives? Or is it more on a broader societal level that we need to act?
So it's hard for me to talk about, I guess, individual mindset and growth. You mentioned about before, because I don't want to wade too much into areas that aren't really my speciality. What I can say is that, at least from the professional chess scene, which is not very big in Australia at all, of course, but in Europe is actually a big thing, quite a legitimate career path you can take. A lot of the top female players, you notice that they are incredibly strong-willed and also incredibly thick-skinned. They've got this ability to shake off any sort of pressures. Still, you find, like, if you beat a strong male player, they might get a bit grumpier than they would if they lost to a male player. To a female. You still see this, not as much, but it's definitely there. There are some sort of countries where there is a bit of a pride thing about not being to a female.
They've always got a headache or something was not right.
There's always an excuse. These days I have to say that things are a little bit better than. So you might have seen some of the other quotes that from past world champions, they said some shocking things. You go back to the 60s and 70s, they said women just shouldn't play chess, they don't have the brains for it or whatever. You don't see that today. What you do see is, after a game finishes, sometimes some of the more senior players who've been watching will step in and offer some tips or some suggestions. You do see a lot more mansplaining happening in chess than you might see in some sort of other disciplines. And again, I wouldn't say that that's like conscious sexism, but some of my female friends who are very strong players, when a man comes in and starts telling him super trivial stuff that they already know, I notice that they just brush it off. They just ignore it. They might look at me and roll their eyes, but they don't say anything. I'm not sure whether it's that they've learned this over long periods of time, that this is how you deal with being in a male-dominated profession. Just forget the small stuff and focus on the big stuff, or whether people, like females with that personality to begin with, are the ones that stick with chess and that the others drop out. So
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it comes to the point that if we're going to be in these fields, we just probably have to accept that we are going to have to work harder, and we are going to have to make sacrifices at this point in history, because it's in this unconscious culture that the women are faced with daily that just erodes their joy for their workplace, their sense of ease, their the way that they can move forward and progress in their careers if that's what they want to do. Like, that's another barrier for them. And then there's complications when they have families, and my friends have come across, bias that way as well, when they've had to take time off to have their family. And there's just so many challenges on so many levels still for women. And I think that it's about acknowledging that, really, and being willing to kind of just do the work. Like you say, these women that are in the chess field, they're very resilient, and they're not going to be deterred. Well, do we have anything else we wanted to talk about?
I'll just say that I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that acknowledging it on both sides is really important, particularly on the male side, because I think we're just not aware of it most of the time.
That's right.
So when it comes like I said, when it comes to what females can do to overcome it, I really feel like I have nothing valuable to say, and it's more strong role models in the community in different fields have much more to say there. On the male side of things, that's where I think maybe I can help a little bit, because for most of the males, like in the chess world, also economics where I am, and other fields, we're not aware of unconscious bias as much. And like you said, it's very hard to acknowledge that you've got it yourself, unconscious bias.
Exactly.
But we're also not aware of things like the stereotype of threat that affect females. So say in the chess world, we've had many big discussions about, should we have any sort of affirmative action policies? Should we make a team of just the best 10 players in a country? Or should we say you've got to have best 8 players, but at least 2 female players? And that can be very divisive.
I can imagine.
Yeah, well, a lot of males will say, hey, this is an equal sport.
Exactly.
Why are we giving females special treatment?
Yes.
A lot of these males don't understand about stereotype threat. They don't understand that a 4-year-old girl already thinks that she can't become a grandmaster because she's a girl, and that gets worse as you get older. When you think about having kids, like having to make a decision between kids and a career is not something that my gender ever thinks about.
No, exactly. And because I remember clearly making my career choice with the knowledge that I would have a family. So I chose to be a teacher, to have the school holidays, and all these types of things. And you're actually making your choices based on that. Well, I did. I was influenced that way. But I was going to say, so you've talked a little bit about the chess world. What do you think, other than just not having the role models, actually impacts women? Because for me, this is a bit of my own story. You've really opened up my world already, just having heard your interview, because my little boy who's 7, he begged me to play checkers the other morning, and I've never played a board game ever. I have this almost fear of them for some reason. And he just said, no, Mummy, please play with me. And I just thought, I need to do this. This is actually important, because in my mind and the way I was brought up, that was just a waste of time, and you needed to be doing more, productive things with your time. And as a mother and a woman in general, I'm so busy, and I have a list this long every day. And I found myself saying to him, oh, I'd love to, sweetie, but I've got to make you breakfast, and I've got this to do, and I've got this to do, this to do. And there's never a time in my day where I feel I can sit down with ease and have whatever time it takes to complete this game. And I found myself getting a little bit frustrated by the end, because I was like, is this game going to finish? And I actually didn't care if I won or lost. I just wanted to get through this game so I could go make breakfast. And I see all these other issues that are part of how we're cultured as women. So it's our minds are elsewhere lots of the time. So what other things impact? Like, I know that's probably not an issue when you're very young, possibly, but that definitely prevents me from, entering that world
Yeah,
or learning my timetables.
I can definitely appreciate there. And actually, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there actually, because there are some differences that researchers have identified between males and females from birth, such as competitiveness. And an innate competitiveness seems to be connected with testosterone. So the more testosterone you're
Yes,
born with, the more competitive you
very
are.
good point.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I think about something like not chess necessarily, I mean, definitely chess, but also other things like mathematics and other male-dominated pursuits that we really push as competition. You've got to be better than other people in the math exam. If it was reframed a little bit as an individual learning experience, say, for instance, with chess being a great educational tool for kids, a problem-solving activity that they sink their teeth into. Same with math or other things like that, rather than always being something where you feel like you're competing against others, that might encourage more females to get involved in it. Again, I'm thinking a bit more institutional rather than from the individual level.
Personal. But these things inform us as individuals. Like, you've already informed me as a mother, where I'm more open to that now, and I'm more conscious of, like, I definitely favor my son to play checkers with, like, I've never asked my daughter to play a game of checkers. It just has never crossed my mind. So I'm doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's totally natural to do it.
It's so subconscious.
Yeah. But it's also the case that if a daughter doesn't want to play chess, and a son does,
she's never shown an interest, so I've never pursued it.
But maybe it is that she doesn't prefer it, and that's also okay. Maybe she would prefer to do something that's a bit less competitive, but also cognitively challenging, like music or something like this, where you're not always competing with someone, but you're still getting those same skills. And I'm completely okay with the possibility that males and females may have different preferences, maybe at an average level. What I really am trying to bring awareness to is the fact that sometimes we assume it when it's not actually there, and sometimes a girl will drop out when she would actually prefer to keep going because of something else that's going on, not because of her own.
That's where the issue is. Yes.
Yeah. And it's super hard to identify these things. And like you said, it's super hard to try to deal with your own unconscious biases. I think we all have them all the time. But bringing a bit more awareness to them can only be a good thing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And that's what we're going to aim to do this month is become aware of our unconscious biases, become aware of what we are meeting, what stories we've accepted of ourselves, and we'll look more into ways of how to overcome them, personally. But I really love the work that you're doing to change things on an institutional level. And I just really appreciate your time and wisdom. And I can't wait to share this with everyone and just get a conversation going around this. So thank you so much, David. Was there anything else you wanted to say before we go?
No, look, like I said, this is not the field that I usually go into, but it's been really fun for me, and I'm also really looking forward to what you're putting together this month.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's actually super exciting. So I can't wait. So thank you, and we'll see you again another time.
Great. Okay.
Thanks, David.